Give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. What are some examples of this? If you're a U.S. citizen, 25 or older, are unmarried, and make less than $30,000 a year, you can get a free, grant-funded ride through community college if you specify on the FAFSA that your parents will not be helping you. I used it to learn how to weld, but it can be applied to anything from IT to any other well-paying skill you can think of. Important edit. Also, someone fact-checked this, but I think you must be a full-time student to get full funding. I'm not sure about this at all. However, at the time I was a security guard, so I happened to have the free time for homework, online courses, etc. in addition to my in-person classes. Important edit too. Okay, so, I just learned the following from you, Mr. Tweakers below. Go ahead and upvote him. Yes, you must be a full-time student to receive the entire Pell Grant. However, if you go half-time you get half of the Pell Grant. Also, you don't need to be 25 years old if A. you have a child, B. you are a veteran, C. you have ever been in foster care, or D. you have ever been declared a ward of the state. Also, you need not be a U.S.-born citizen. If you have a green card, that qualifies you, and, specifically in California, if you are undocumented but have a taxpayer ID, then you qualify. Edit. Also add this little secret. If you don't meet the qualifications for adulthood as specified but your parents are divorced, you are only required by law to include count that, parent's income. There are no laws stating which one you have to pick either, so pick the one that's not as well off, lol. This right here is how I got my associate degree. Now I make enough money to pay for me to take a class or two each semester for my bachelor, not the student loan insight. Edit. Looks like people are actually reading this. So for the ladies out there, if you have even a remote interest in working with computers, and don't know what career you want, go for a degree in IT. They can't get women fast enough. Every company wants to look progressive, so while I acknowledge that it sucks for the men trying to get these same jobs, I also highly encourage you to take advantage of an opportunity to get into a very well-paying and stable career path. Regardless of your gender, there are a ton of grants and scholarships out there, and once you land a job, many companies will pay for your certifications and even a more advanced degree. There are strings attached, which is why I pay for my own classes. But it's worth it for many, and there are a lot of empty slots in areas like networking and cybersecurity. Programming is sexy, but the network and cyber jobs aren't, so there are many more opportunities. Edit 2. I'm starting to get DMs about how to get started with this. Start with www.fafsa.gov. Fill out the forms as best you can. Unless you're rich or are still a dependent on someone's taxes, you will probably qualify for more aid than you think. Next, find a couple of schools in your area or online. Western Governors University is an excellent online school with IT programs, and they are affordable and very flexible, so I like them for people who already work full-time. Schools often offer in-house grants on a need or merit basis. If push comes to shove, most people will qualify for subsidized student loans, meaning you don't pay interest until you graduate. Having a $10,000 loan hanging over your head probably isn't fun, but it beats the hell out of plus $40K for a degree from an expensive 4-year school. Edit 3. This is getting a lot more attention than I'm used to, so I won't try to keep up with responses anymore, but there is some great information to be found here. Several people are commenting on certs specific to DoD jobs, and I'm learning some great stuff. The DoD seems to value different certs than what I've come across with public sector work. And for the guys out there, someone pointed out that skilled nurse and education jobs are fantastic career opportunities for men. I know nothing about what's needed to get into these fields, but someone out there does. In any event, good luck to everyone trying to get themselves a decent job. It's miserable out there, so take advantage of whatever you can. You don't have to be super passionate about your career to live a happy and fulfilling life, but you do need one that gets the bills paid. Final edit. There's a lot of overwhelming support. I wish I had time to reply to everyone, but alas, I have a life outside of Reddit. Also, phew, some people coming out angry. That's okay. The world is a hard place. If you want it to be different, then do your part. As for me, I'm more concerned with taking care of my family than I am about holding some lofty ideals. Don't want women to get a leg up in IT jobs? Cool. You go on and create a society where women get exactly the same opportunities as men and don't have to listen to a bunch of boys talking about how silence is consent right while she's sitting in a classroom trying to get an education. While you are doing that, I'll keep on encouraging people to do whatever it takes to care for themselves because someone else's ideals don't put clothes on my back, and I doubt they'll do much for the next person either. When was it changed to 25 or older? Does anyone know? I used this during the Obama years right after high school. 100% sure. I made zero income, so you get the full Pell Grant, which covers most community college completely, and you can also take out the government-subsidized loans. It's like $10K a year, one believe, but I may be wrong on that. But if you're over 25 now, FAFSA still works. You fill it out, you get the money to your school, and bam, you're a student. But I am 100% sure that you didn't have to be 25 and older until recently. Yes, you must be a full-time student to receive the entire Pell Grant. However, if you go half-time you get half of the Pell Grant. Also, you don't need to be 25 years old if A. you have a child, B. you are a veteran, C. you have ever been in foster care, or D. you have ever been declared a ward of the state. Also, you need not be a U.S. born citizen. If you have a green card, that qualifies you, and, specifically in California, if you are undocumented but have a taxpayer ID then you qualify. My sister-in-law used to spend ages getting the kids to put their dishes in the washer, clothes in the hamper, etc. Starting very young. Like just able to carry the stuff young. She was patient and firm, but it sometimes took a long while of pouting and whining. We joked about it once and she was like, this is an investment for when they're older. She was like that with everything with them, and other family members later wondered why I'd jump to babysit her kids who were awesome and not the other nieces and nephews who were feral. My kid is 9 and wants to cook her own eggs. I say fine as long as she has adult supervision. I was away and she asks my husband if she can make scrambled eggs for dinner. He says yeah fine, have your sister help you. Sissy is 12. Eggs were made without a fire ... But next time I went to wash dishes, I found a storage container melted all over the bottom side of the hot pan they threw in the sink still steaming. Man. It's fine if she makes eggs but watch the child. Did this with my parents, mom mostly. Every time something went wrong I would fix it, and I kept telling them I couldn't save them every time something went wrong with the computer. I gave them tools like antiviruses, gave them crash courses on ad blockers, and general knowledge of this looks sketchy as a motherfucker, don't click that. Mom eventually bricked her laptop twice with God's know what, and I told her that if they kept having me fix things, they'd have to start paying me. Surprisingly, no more laptops have died. When my parents died, me and my 2 siblings each inherited around $20,000. Now, it's important here, because this story doesn't make me look very smart, to note that we were all in very different life stages. I had an established career, I'm the oldest, and I own my own house, so I socked a few K into my kids' 529 plan. I took a vacation and I accelerated a car purchase that, prior to this, I had tentatively planned for a few years down the road and that I was nervous about because I wasn't sure my car at the time would last long enough. My sister was still in the Navy. My brother was screwing around at community college, accumulating many credits in seeming nonsense that wasn't leading to a degree or any meaningful training. He picked classes based on what sounded cool or where he thought he had a decent chance of getting laid. If I were a betting man I would have put the money on my sister being the responsible one and my brother pissing away that money by the end of the year. My sister bought a truck, and my brother, I still don't fully understand what happened. got transformed into a responsible adult. He stashed the $20,000 in a mutual fund that had a solid performance history. Because he had taken courses in almost every program at his CC, he had also taken finance, and his professor was a practicing stockbroker who taught students how to research and evaluate stocks, mutual funds, etc. He then turned around and declared a major, for the 7th or 8th time, and found himself ready to graduate after one more semester, since he needed to take like 3 more courses to actually meet some degree requirements. He got a job at a temp agency and began working on his bachelor's on weekends and at night, pre-internet learning really being a serious thing. He had no credit, but since he opened up his investment account through his local bank, they were willing to give him a credit card even after all of the big box retailers and others turned him down. He utilized his credit but never carried any meaningful balance. 2 years later, my money is long gone. Aside from the equity in my car and the money I put into the 529, my brother's balance is around $26,000. He's graduating with his bachelor's degree. He leverages his temp job to get a job in HR, super entry level. Nothing fancy, but from there he climbs the ranks, and today he's a VP of HR at an international corporation. He's making money like a boss, so much so that when I decided to start my own business about 2-3 years ago, he helped me secure financing and gave me a little bit of cash to help purchase the commercial property I now own. Now obviously where he is now, it took him years of work, but I was always fascinated by his sudden shift, so I asked him about it. He told me when he got that check his first thought was to go out and buy a Rolex and whatever mods for his Pontiac Sunfire to make it look really sick. Then he realized that if he did that, he would have a watch he couldn't afford to maintain and a car that would eventually break down. He would get a few years, tops, of pleasure out of those things and be left with nothing in the end. He wanted those things because he wanted to feel like a success, and he realized the best way to feel like a success was to become a success. The teach to fish thing was interesting because he screwed around so much at community college that he had, unbeknownst to all of us, him included, he had acquired quite a breadth of knowledge that most people lack. He can draw exceptionally well because he learned how to draw from an actual artist. He can fix his car because he took courses in automotive and in-body work. He was able to invest his money because he took some courses in finance. He was able to land a temp job in HR departments because he had some coursework in those areas too, and could competently speak the language even if he was only there as an administrative assistant. He is a really good cook because he took cooking classes, and the list goes on. So he didn't just take his community college time and turn it over to a bachelor's degree and go forward. He took all of these pieces of knowledge that by themselves made little sense. In the end, it made him one of the most well-rounded and talented people I've ever met. He has interesting hobbies. He knows how to fix many things. He is well-rounded and well-read. He didn't just learn to fish as a means to feed himself. He took what he was taught and synthesized it holistically into his entire being. He still has that $20,000, worth much more now, BTW. Accumulating many credits in seeming nonsense that wasn't leading to a degree or any meaningful training. When I went to university, I took an eclectic blend of classes. I was enrolled in sciences but wanted to take some business courses. I also wanted to take some engineering courses. I needed permission of the deans of each school to take courses at the other, and they all said the same thing. Why would anyone want to take computer science courses and business courses? To me it was obvious, and, now that I am approaching retirement age, it seems like a no-brainer. I've had great success, simply because I am as comfortable in the data center as I am in the boardroom, and that has made me a trusted advisor to the people who hold the money, and the inner circle is always rewarded. There's tons of microfinance schemes which do exactly this. Mohammed Yunus got a Nobel Peace Prize for setting up a bank, Grameen Bank, which primarily dealt in microloans to women in Bangladesh. Give them a microloan to buy 2 chickens. Those chickens will lay eggs and make other chickens which can be sold and buy more chickens, and so on. I've seen schemes here in the UK and US with microloans for things like help to get tools to start a gardening business. Kiva is, was a well-known org which did crowd-funded versions, sort of. The loans have nil or minimal interest and are backed by eternal parties. Whilst the Kiva concept was that your money would help a lady in Fiji buy a loom, the money donated to Kiva never actually went to the final recipient. Local banks provided the loans and Kiva provided security on them. I'm a chef, and have been for 20+ years. I've had a fuck ton of people that have wanted to be apprentices. Most don't last a week, but further than that, bread, before even getting apprentices to peel stuff etc. I get them to make bread, because bread, once they've made the recipe a few times I get them to try and make a flavor of their choice. Typically they'll use an ingredient with extra liquid, and not think about how that will affect the texture. But you let them go and do their thing. It usually turns out completely shit. And then after you talk with them about what went right, what went wrong, how to change recipes on the fly while keeping things within the parameters of the expected outcome, you can always teach, but you can never force people to learn. You can also not expect people to just know the outcome. Retired chef here. This is a truly awful way to introduce people to cooking, lol. No wonder most don't last a week, lol. You know full well that baking is practically the opposite of the rest of cooking. You can improvise and fudge ingredients when cooking, but baking is a science. There is no reality where just setting somebody loose on a custom bread recipe is even a remotely decent way to instruct. It takes concrete knowledge and consistent attention to detail, plus using the right type of herbs and seasonings, to make interesting bread. You know that. It sounds like you're personally responsible for misleading, miseducating, and ultimately discouraging a whole bunch of apprentices, lol. This kind of speaks to the lack of survival home skills a lot of us have. It used to be that skills like darning socks, sewing, making jam and pickles, etc. was passed down through generations. Now, we A. don't have time and B. don't learn these skills from our parents, unless maybe you were Mennonite, grew up on a farm. It's cheap and easy to buy new socks, and planned obsolescence means most technology has a short life. It's sad because it just increases consumerism and waste, and we have lost certain fundamental life skills. Saturday, June 12th. 1983, Johann Bergmeister of Rostock went with his family to Nordsee for lunch, a German fast food chain specializing in seafood. His father purchased him a meal of 2 lightly fried fish fillets and pommes frites. It was a hectic day, and they had skipped breakfast in order to get the day rolling. He would later skip dinner, as well. He then took an apprenticeship at a fishery some years later. The work was grueling but honest. He did not make much on a daily basis, but Johann was diligent and saved as much as he could. He'd eat from his catch, surviving off a mostly pescatarian diet. However, due to rising mercury levels in seafood, he slowly began to suffer from paranoia. He wouldn't trust his fellow fishermen who'd share the deck with him. Mein fish, dien fish, unser fish, ich match die chant fish. Johann became convinced that his boatmates were actually fish spies, who had taken human form in order to fish people. He confronted Hans, the captain of the small ship. His accusations were dismissed under the assumption that he had been drinking. Soon afterwards, Johann decided to enact his revenge on the fish spies. He left the fishery, and moved to England. He started a number of businesses, that all failed. He no longer ate fish, but the mercury had already done his damage. As a paranoid schizophrenic, he was unable to secure lasting employment, and having spent all his savings into failed business ventures, he became homeless. He lived the rest of his life in the outskirts of Essex, scavenging scraps to feed himself. Eventually, his paranoia led him to believe that the scraps were out to get him, too, leading to a final fast, until death took him away from his starvation. Humanitarian work. Giving money to government or even building important infrastructure for them is not as helpful as it might seem and leaves the locals feeling small and dependent. Instead, teach locals how to build important infrastructure. Hire them, let them build it up instead of foreign volunteers. Help them to know how to help themselves. Also, they are more capable than foreigners as they know how to create things that can withstand their climate and other factors. Let them use their local knowledge. So yeah, Teach them how to fish and buy their fish.